Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Good morning and welcome to a live edition of PodUp with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. It's Thursday. That means we got Brent, a college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter, in just a second. But if you missed it last night, the Denver Nuggets take a 2-1 lead over the Miami Heat, kind of blow them out down there in South Florida. Tonight, you got Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals between the Panthers and the Golden Knights. And in Women's College World Series in Game 1, the Sooners, I think they won their 52nd straight game. They take a 1-0 lead in the series against the Lady Semis. So they'll probably close that out tonight, I would think. And tomorrow, Gator Baseball hosts the South Carolina Gamecocks. Got to win 2 games to get a trip to Omaha. Let's go to the Titan More Hotline, and we're joined, as I said, by our college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter, Brent Beard. Good morning, Brent. You're on the Titan More Hotline. How you doing, my man?
Good morning, Shane. Again, in June, there's plenty to talk about, interesting things that have come up over the last few days. Again, the magazines are out on the stands, Lindy's and Athlon. If folks are looking for some good beach reading, there's nothing better to bone up on. And Shane, I'm telling you, people need the magazines just to refresh themselves on where some of these teams have gone in different conferences. So it will be a real reference guide this year.
Yeah, as you mentioned, both Lenny's and Athlon's, we've talked about where they have the Gators ranked and all that kind of stuff. Phil Steele magazine, I thought I saw on Twitter, it's out or on the way?
No, it's on the way. It will be on the shelves by July the 4th. Now, to his credit, Steele, it's amazing how hard this guy works, but his magazine is a year-round effort, frankly. He interviews, there's about 130-something different schools. He interviews probably 100 coaches, and I mean on the phone, and to have that kind of access is unbelievable. Frankly, talks to them for about an hour about the roster. So the point being, you need a magnifying glass to read it, but it is really by far the most accurate magazine as far as the rosters are concerned.
Yes, indeed. Some news out of the Big Ten. They're going to release their scheduling format this afternoon, correct?
Yeah, this is coming today, is my understanding. Their new commissioner, Tony Petitti, will be dealing with that. Here's the problem with the Big Ten and this schedule. See, they've got a new television contract, and part of that television contract is, well, guys, we play games at night. Well, the problem is in the Big Ten country, night in November is a little bit different than night in November in the SEC. Night in November in the Big Ten could be snow. It could be below freezing temperatures. So there's been some complaining about that, but believe me, the money the Big Ten is going to get from this deal, which I understand is basically like $1 billion, that should, when the checks come in, Shane, that should make the complaining athletic directors a little happier.
There's no doubt about that. Also, just some general news around the country. There's a lot going on up in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill. What's that all about, Brent?
There are coaches and officials from college football who are in Washington, D.C. this week to discuss NIL regulation with Congress. Now, the NCAA would love for Congress to straighten out the NIL and do that for them, but the coaches are there. Greg Sankey, Nick Saban, Hugh Freeze, Bruce Pearl, Scott Strickland, John Calipari are among some of the guys and women who are up there talking to Congress. We will know more about this probably by the end of the week or in the upcoming weeks to see what and how this works. But it is a good idea in that they're finally talking to some of the people who can help them if they will listen to them. So, again, nothing concrete with this. Shane and I are just reporting that they are there this week to talk, to strategize, and hopefully something positive will come out of this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking at this list that you sent me with the so-called, coaches, ADs. There's some athletes as well. What's funny to me, I don't know what, this kind of cracks me up for some reason. The coaches that are there representing the Southeastern Conference, obviously Nick Saban, okay, but then you got Hugh Freeze, Bruce Pearl, and John Calipari. These dudes have always been cheating or doing something, and here they are. You don't have any other, like, you don't have Billy Napier, you don't have any of the other guys don't have any show causes or anything. I think it's kind of funny.
They might be. I'm sure there are other coaches and officials who are there. This was just basically who some of the reporters who were up there. This is who they saw. But yes, I can appreciate what you said very much.
Yeah. Brent, before we move into the going around the league and stuff, we do know that Florida's playing a primetime game against Utah. I should know this. Do we know what is it on ESPN? I know it's not CBS, so it has to be ESPN, or is it ABC?
Yeah, it is. It's Thursday night, ESPN. I don't know if they've got I'll double check and see if they've got a time for that yet. They probably don't, but look, it wouldn't take long to figure out that is probably going to be 8 o'clock, I would think, particularly when you're having it over there. So, but the most important thing about it is Shane Matthews will be able to play golf in Utah, and that will be the highlight of the week.
But Brent, I got it scheduled. I am going to be playing golf Thursday, the day of the game, Friday after the game, Saturday after the game, and flying home on Sunday. So
Tremendous.
I have it all scheduled out. So I've never been out there to play golf, so I'm anxious to do that.
Absolutely.
For sure. Before we move on, Andy has a question here brought to you by Melvin Law on Facebook. He says, Brent, was the 8-game SEC schedule for 2024 the result of the many high-profile non-conference games like Florida, Miami, LSU, USC, and Georgia Clemson?
That's a good question, and there's some outstanding, and I mean outstanding games and non-conference games next year. Not so much this year, but next year. By the way, Alabama comes to Florida State in 2025, so hopefully they'll be able to do that one too. I don't think it was so much, Andy, that they were trying to protect those games, but fortunately, those games were protected. And by the way, the 2024 schedule for the SEC will be out on June 14th, which is next Wednesday. So that will be a big splash, I'm sure. And see, we don't know what we're going to get from that. We certainly won't get times. And we don't exactly know, are we just going to get the SEC schedule? We can get the whole schedule. There's a lot we don't know yet. So that will be interesting as they reveal what's going on. But more to Andy's question, they stuck with 8 games with Oklahoma and Texas coming in. They really proceeded with caution is what they did. A lot of people thought they were going to 9. They stayed with 8. And a lot of that was because I don't think they could come up with an agreement yet on who see, if you go to 9, you're going to have 3 permanent opponents and 6 opponents that are rotating. And I don't think they could come up with an agreement with that. That's what I've seen this week as much as anything else that may have delayed that. The other reason for the delay was, and let's be very honest about this, to go from 8 to 9, they want more money from ESPN. And that money was not there yet. Will that money be there in a year? It might. We don't know. But we've got to be real honest about that. That had a lot to do with staying with 8 before going to 9, which I think they will in a few years.
We may have talked about this last week about the 8-9 games coming out of Destin. I don't know if we did or not, but the only schools that supported the 9-game SEC schedule were the Gators, Georgia, LSU, Missouri, and A&M. Does that surprise you, Brent, that the other ones only wanted to stick with 8?
Yeah, to some degree. Now, my understanding is when Oklahoma and Texas come in, that they both want 9, so that will increase the ranks for 9. And I'm sure there will be a lot of, I don't want to use the word arm twisting, but there'll be a lot of continued talks about this. There'll be, and look, they could work some of this stuff out over the next few months, and I suspect that they will. People would have been a lot happier with this if the SEC would have said, okay, we're going to stay with status quo in 2024, but in 25, 26, or 27, we're going to 9. I think they would have accepted that more. We don't have that yet. But to Shane's point, well, all these schools have an agenda according to different reports, but I think they'll be coming closer to 9 a little bit later.
Hey, Chris Doring Mortgage, they do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Doring Mortgage today at 352-244-0840. Speaking with Brent Beard, our college football analyst on the Titan More Hotline. Got any questions for Brent? Shoot them our way. All right, signing day is changing, correct or no?
Well, possibly. There's been a lot of talk about that. That's kind of the standard answer for anything that comes up in a chain. Possibly, the moving or eliminating the December signing period was a real discussion at the AFCA, that's the Coaches Association, back in January, and the conversation extended to these spring meetings. So they talked about that. Now, I'll give Ross Dellinger credit for this. The momentum seems to be moving the early signing day from the 3rd Wednesday in December to either late November, early December to early August, which is where I thought they should have had it for years, or to any point after a prospect's senior year. Now, I won't belabor the point here, but this is important because there are way too many things going on in December. You've got playoff games, you've got signing day, you've got exams, you've got practicing for bowl games. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get some of this stuff off their plate. And the easiest thing to do along that line would probably be moving early signing day to another time. So we'll see where that goes. But for now, the momentum looks like that's going to change. And frankly, Shane, it really needs to. Right now, it's just too much.
Yes, for sure. All right, we have 1,000 bowl games and people bitch and complain about it. I love it. The more bowl games, the better, because it gives me something to watch and us to talk about. But it's a reward for the players. And even if people don't show up in the stands, they don't care. There's talk now about a bowl being played in Mexico.
The Big 12 and Brent Yormark is very aggressive as a commissioner of the Big 12 and looking for revenue streams and how to increase his brand. Well, I mean, to have a bowl game in Mexico seems like nonsense to some people, but in a lot of ways, I give them a lot of credit. They are trying to extend their brand. They'll make who knows how much money off this. Now, obviously, if you're going to Mexico, you're going to have to be careful. And I'm sure security would be pretty tight for this along a lot of lines. But they're trying to get football and basketball to be played in Mexico City. Now, Kansas and Houston have agreed in a regular season basketball game in Mexico City in December of 2024. So, look, I tell you where this is going. It's going everywhere, and you're going to see also the SEC eventually get involved in this and have a few games, maybe even in Europe or wherever. And again, Shane, this is all about money, and this is all about different revenue streams and what can they do in order to bring some more money in. And I know it's a money grab to a degree, but they're discussing this, and I think this will happen. They're looking at maybe starting after the 2026 season.
John asked on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mellon Law. Brent, what's the latest on conference realignment? Is Colorado on the move again?
Maybe they've been discussed as a possibility. There's still a lot of that we're still waiting on. Now, again, with the Big 12, they've added several teams, as most people know, and they are, as their commissioner, again, we mentioned Brent Yormark a few minutes ago, he loves to say, we're open for business. That's his motto, which means that they are indeed looking around. So at this point, that we mentioned Colorado, you've still got Oregon and Washington is rumored to be maybe going to the Big Ten, or they staying pat for a while. So anything's possible at this point. And Colorado is kind of the team this week to discuss about them moving. And understand this, that if you're in the Pac-12, you've got to do something to protect yourself. So believe me, you're on the phone probably every day talking to someone about getting a better deal than what you've got now.
Charlie has a question here. We touched on it. I haven't heard much recently about it, but he said, any more talk of conference expansion? A few weeks back, I heard the ACC schools trying to get out of their TV contracts, looking to potentially leave the ACC. Where is that? Because remember, wasn't it like Florida? What they call themselves? That little group of people in the ACC that wanted to leave.
Yeah. There were some, and this was a tongue in cheek, but there were some sports writers who call them the Magnificent Seven.
That's it. Yeah.
So, okay, here's the latest on that.
How magnificent is that seven? Tell me those schools. Do you know?
I'd have to go back and look that up. But I think they were both Virginia schools.
They're real magnificent.
Yeah. And so, but look, the reality of that is the Magnificent Seven were schools that were looking around, trying to think that they could get out of, and I don't blame them. Again, the media rights deal is through 2036. And if you get through the media rights, you would have to pay a $120 million exit fee. You would have to, let's just say Florida State goes into the SEC. And I'm being facetious here, but you'll get the point. If they did that, they would have to give up their media rights and whatever money they made back to the ACC, not the SEC. And I've heard Heather Dennett say, Andrew Adelson, who covers the ACC for ESPN, she said, believe it or not, if you did that, you would not be able to televise any of your games for any sport. Now, that is a mouthful there. So but the reality is, you've still got a lot of people, they're still looking at the contract, seeing if they can get out. And if they can get out, then they want to be able to do that. So that's still up for grabs. North Carolina State, Miami, Florida State, Clemson, Virginia Tech, the Magnificent Seven.
Interesting. Vince says here, Brent, who are these people in the photos of you that Shane puts on the screen during your segment? People don't know Brent's a TV star over in the Jacksonville area.
These are fun. I work with First Coast News as their college football analyst. So most of those pictures that we use have been or folks that or with the station in our sports department. So that's who it is. Thank you for looking. And when Shane and I can figure out the technology, and Zach may have to help us with this, and I actually was able to do this the other day, is Shane and I share notes, and when we can figure out a way to get our picture both on the small screen and I can see my notes, we'll actually do this looking at each other one day.
That's right. Tony says you're a TV megastar.
Yeah.
John has a question here before we move forward. Facebook Live brought to you by Mellon Law. Could we get to a point where a conference kicks out the bottom feeders? For example, does the Big Ten really need Rutgers if they are in LA market and coast to coast?
I understand the question, and people have asked for years, well, when's the SEC going to get rid of Vanderbilt? Well, they're not, and that will never happen for a lot of reasons. Well, and the reality of it is, if the massive PR hit that you would take from kicking somebody out it would have to be, Shane, it would have to be something absolutely egregious for that to happen. I mean, like every sport get hit with incredible recruiting violations or something, and I don't know if even that would do it. But I think it would be more on. But see, the reality is Vanderbilt doesn't give you much in football, but it does give you something in some of the other sports, as an example. So it would be an unusual situation, or they could strike it. Look, anything's possible in this day and age. Shane, could some of these conferences strike a deal with another conference and actually trade some teams one day? Look, no, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm being more facetious there. But the reality is, Shane, in this day and age, in 5 to 10 years, would anything surprise you?
No, it's total chaos. It's changed daily. Yeah, it's crazy. Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Visit them at peachlanddental.com. All right, Brent, let's go. Let's start with we have thousands and thousands of ACC viewers on our program. I'm just kidding. But let's start with Miami. I didn't realize this till I was reading through what you sent me. I don't know if I've ever seen a team. Obviously, last year was Mario Cristobal's first year, just like Billy Napier.
Right.
But dude, have you ever seen a coach just like dismantle one side of the ball from a coaching staff standpoint?
Yeah, they really did, didn't they? Josh Gaddis is going as offensive coordinator. Shannon Dawson is the new offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach. I don't know if you know him or not, but
he's part of from the Mike Leach tree.
Yes, yes, you're right about that. Good point. Kevin Beard is wide receivers coach. Tim Harris is the new running backs coach. Cody Woodell is the new tight ends coach. And I'm curious if you know any of these guys besides Shannon.
No.
And also Alex Mirabal, the offensive line coach, they kept him. Now, they did get the left guard from Alabama, Javian Cohen, and UCF center Matt Lee is in there too. You remember Tyler Harrell from Alabama? He was at Louisville. He's at Miami now. And Shamir Kirk is a JUCO kid. They added Nebraska running back A.J. Allen. But, I mean, Shane, that's just Miami and just a little bit on offense. But, I mean, is it not amazing? And I've got a note in here about Ole Miss a few minutes ago. They've added I believe it's 14 transfers on the defensive side of the ball. It is, and I know what you do for radio for the Gators, but some of it's going to be interesting. Some of these teams that you're going to be broadcasting about that Florida plays this year, you're going to be looking at the roster, and you'll be looking at last year's roster, and it's almost a whole different side of that ball. It's just amazing, Shane.
Yeah, it's not that difficult for me as the color guy, but for the play-by-play guy, it's extremely difficult.
Sure it is.
This is an interesting question here. Jerry says, will we see the college game transition like the NFL, where people have a fantasy league of college players and pay more attention to how their fantasy league is doing than how their team is doing? That already happens, Jerry. And you brought that up because back when my son was on the team, you know, all my buddies from college and stuff, they're diehard Gator fans that would come to the game. They did all this college fantasy stuff. This was in 2020. And I took a screenshot of it, and I just pulled it up after I saw his question. And it has Anthony Richardson at $4,500, Luke Matthews at $4,500. The same price as Anthony Richardson if you wanted him on your fantasy team. I don't know how I show that, but I just think it's interesting. I said I'll always keep that because my son people could have bought him to be on their fantasy team. Yeah, so that's funny. John says, does Cristobal at Miami remind you of Champ at Florida with the turnover on the offensive side of the ball? Pretty good comparison, but it's been year one. I can't remember what Will did after year one when he was here, but I don't know if I've seen a staff, you know, have that much turnover after 1 year. Yeah. Let's talk about the semis. What's going on in Tallahassee?
Well, for one, there are two possibilities for the College Football Hall of Fame, or Warwick Dunn and Peter Warwick.
Those are pretty good players.
I think that will happen. Matter of fact, I vote. I'm one of the voters in the College Football Hall of Fame, and believe me, those two will get my vote.
I would vote for them too.
Yes. The other things going on at FSU, Destin Hill, Destyn, is finally enrolled. He's from New Orleans. He signed with FSU in 2021, but he did not enroll in the 21 class or the 22 class. We don't know why, but he's now back. And after a lot of speculation, he is on campus and he is enrolled. I mean, he's a tremendous player, or at least he was. If you don't play for 2 years, Shane, I don't know how much that's going to help him, but at all. But they just said it was a personal matter. We don't know. But he met with the media this week, did fine. So look, they've got playmakers, man. There's no doubt about that. I mean, the Wilson kid at 6'7". They've got another wide receiver at 6'4". So that's going to be a very fascinating game with LSU to start the season in Orlando.
You know, I'm anxious to see how many. I wouldn't be surprised if LSU doesn't have half of that stadium. I don't know why I have that feeling. You know, there's always been that talk that FSU doesn't travel very well. Now, obviously, the game is in Orlando, so there'll be plenty of fans. But you know, them damn Cajuns, they travel. And with them to have like 3 or 4 days in Orlando, they could pack that place for sure.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Brent, real quick on the Hall of Fame, College Football Hall of Fame, is there a certain amount that goes in each year? Or does it fluctuate from year to year? And how is it who gets the most votes? How does that work?
you're on the ballot for a certain number of years, and then I think you just kind of rotate off, but they've got players, they've got coaches, and what we would call Division I, and then they've got players and coaches in the lower divisions. Now it's a lot harder as a voter to vote for some of these players, Shane, who are in like the lower divisions, because a lot of these guys you never heard of. But the interesting thing there is you see a lot of coaches who had really great careers in the lower divisions that really never made it in Division I. So it's always fascinating to look over that ballot. By the way, I'll get the ballot, and I know some of that's available, and we'll go over that at some point in the next few weeks. I think people would be interested to see who's on it.
Yeah, and I guess also what I'm asking is, let's just say each year, is it 5 players, or can one year there be 5 players go in and the next year like 7?
That's a good question. They've got different criteria for different things, and let me check on some of that.
Okay.
That's a great question to kind of see what they do. Some of those inner workings we don't know,
Gotcha.
but they have their little banquet in, well, it's not little, but in December, and we have a deadline to vote this month, and they'll announce the winners probably in July.
All right. The Clemson Tigers, before we move on to the SEC, boy, they are tearing up the recruiting trail.
Well, listen, anybody who thinks Clemson is not going to be very good anymore, they're greatly mistaken. I mean, right now, they've got one of the best recruiting classes for 2024, and they just added a kid named Bryant Wesco. He's a 4-star wide receiver from Texas. Our listeners may not be familiar with some of the names at this point, but this is going to be a very good class. As you know, they had some turnover. DJU is no longer the quarterback, which probably is a good thing. But this, but this will be Florida State and Clemson to battle this out in the ACC.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the Southeastern Conference, College Station. They're my sleeper team, if they can be a sleeper team. I just think, and I'm hanging everything on Bobby Petrino calling plays because I think he's outstanding. But boy, I think they have the best receiving core, definitely in the SEC, maybe in the country.
And it may get better because former Kentucky wide receiver Jordan Anthony is going to announce. It's going to announce today, as a matter of fact. So keep your eye on that. Evan Stewart and Ian Smith, Moose Muhammad, Shane, and I'm not. This is not a hyperbole. This may be the best wide receiver group in the league.
It's not even close, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, they've got their lines of scrimmage are going to be better. You've got Max Johnson, who's their backup quarterback, to Connor Weedman, but they were very good in the spring. And Shane's right. I think this is a team that could be better than people think they are. And Shane, remember, they go to Miami in September for a 3:30 game. That will be a huge game for both those schools.
Yeah, and the Aggies will have more people there than they will probably. The Vols, what's going on up in Knoxville?
I think one of the interesting things here is who they got in for their College Hall of Fame ballot. Willie Gault, and who's a track star. If people don't remember Willie Gault, you need to Google him. And Larry Severs is also in the Hall of Fame class. Now, this may surprise some people, or they may have forgotten about this. And I'm curious what you think about this, Shane. Josh Heupel, Josh Heupel, the Tennessee head coach, is on the ballot as a player. Remember, he was at Oklahoma, threw for 7,000 yards, 50 touchdowns during that time. So not as a coach, Shane, but as you and I have talked before, as a player.
I mean, he was okay. I mean, they won the national title, but in my opinion, and nothing against him personally, he does not even need to be on the ballot for the College Football Hall of Fame, quite honestly. That's just my opinion. But I have nothing against Josh Heupel. I just don't see how. What's going on up in South Carolina?
They may have their best linebacker corps since Coach Spurrier was there. I thought that was interesting. Some of these names may be familiar, may not. Mo Kaba is a Mike linebacker. Stone Blanton. They love this kid named P-U-P, Howard. That he is one of the bigger linebackers, very physical. They think he could be a star. Debo Williams, Bam Martin Scott, and Jerron Willis were guys that we may not be familiar with now, but I think by the end of the year we will be.
Anything going on up in Oxford?
Yeah, the number I mentioned a few minutes ago, I wanted to repeat. They got a commitment from Florida Atlantic transfer defensive back Tajam Young, 5'11", 192. Now, Shane, get this. He is the 14th player who is committed to Ole Miss out of the transfer portal since December. I don't mean over the last 2 or 3 years. I mean since December. So, Shane, is it possible that defense that we both think could be not really good at all, could they possibly be better than we think?
It's possible, I guess. You know, it looks like, you know, if you look at the track record of what Lane's done, and a lot of people say Lane's somewhat, I don't want to say lazy is not the right word when it comes to recruiting. He's kind of taken that NFL approach and says, you know what?
Yeah. Right.
I'm not going to roll the dice on high school kids to see if they can play or not in the SEC or college football. I'm going to wait and watch tape, like free agency, see how guys have produced, how they've played in big games. And then if we have an opportunity to go get them, we're going to go get them. And that's kind of their approach. I don't sit in their staff meetings, but that's what it seems like to me. The other state of Mississippi team, what's going on with the Dogs?
Mississippi State is doing well on the recruiting trail too. They've got Luke Work is his last name, 6'6", 285, offensive tackle that has joined them, Purdue, Arkansas State, Army. They also got Fred Clark, who was committed to Ole Miss and changed his mind, is going to Mississippi State. So I'm sure Zach Arnett loved that. To be able to get him. They also got Xavier Gayton, who's a real athlete, 6', 190. He's also from the state of Mississippi. State of Mississippi has some really good football players this year in recruiting. And by the way, an interesting game for Mississippi State. TV schedules were announced, or at least the first 3 games, that they've got a return game with Arizona on September the 9th. That will be in Starkville on the SEC network at 7:30. So that'll be interesting. Then they play LSU in a noon game in September, which I'm sure that will be rather toasty. So will be an interesting year at Mississippi State.
Yeah, Rose Ogre State Farm Office is a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visit ogreinsurance.com. Give them a call, 352-240-1779. A few more minutes with Brent Beard, our college football analyst. LSU, we talked about it last week about the air-conditioned helmets. You know what's interesting is that's a great idea. They're the only ones I've heard that have this. You haven't really heard about it across the country. Have you know anything more about these things?
Well, that's interesting you said that, because that story is slowly getting out. Because there's not a whole lot going on that's late breaking news. So I'm seeing more articles about it, and people miss this. There's a company in Louisiana that have made they call it an air-conditioned helmet. The name of the company is Tiger Air, and they're going to be very rich if this goes over well. But LSU is supposed to put these helmets on in practice and in games. So now, again, Shane can give us his experience from this, and I don't know if it's just constantly blowing cold air into the helmet chain, or they've got a fan in there, or what it is, but the technology is unbelievable. There's a 5-hour lifespan for the battery or the chip or whatever they put in there. And this helmet is supposed to last up to 4 years. How about that? So I don't know if a helmet taking that much abuse can last 4 years, but it's a fascinating concept, isn't it, Shane?
Yeah, it's probably the system, the air conditioning system can last up to 4 years because your helmets have to be reconditioned every year. They have to be sent off to a factory, taken apart, put back together, repainted, and all that kind of stuff. So it is, if it works, Tiger Air is going to make a damn lot of money.
They sure
are. Anything going on with the Dogs up in Athens?
Yeah, they've got they're recruiting well, as you would expect. The latest, Justin Green, he's from Lawrenceville, Georgia. They've been recruiting him for quite a while. He'll be in the class of 2024. He is commitment number 17. So that Georgia's got the number one recruiting class as if they needed it, right, Shane? In a lot of their recruiting rankings.
The Gators have one of my former teammates up for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Brent Culpepper is up, and we can vote for Brad with that. By the way, 14 Hall of Famers, 10 players and 4 coaches for the College Football Hall of Fame with the Gators. So Brad Culpepper being the latest of those. And I think most people probably have heard of this. If you haven't, if you get Netflix, there's going to be a documentary called Swamp Kings on the seasons between 2006 and 2009. And my understanding is they're going to deal with it pretty honestly, the good and the bad of that, that the good being Tim Tebow, the difficult parts being guys like Aaron Hernandez. So Shane, I'll be very fascinated to see how they deal with this.
Yeah, no doubt about it. A little nugget for Gator fans out there. Cade Curlin, the All-American true freshman second baseman for the Gators. His uncle is Brad Culpepper.
Is that right?
Yeah, he's so Cade Curlin's mom is Brad's sister.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Yep. Auburn Tigers, what's going on the Plains?
They have got a defensive back as their latest commitment, Champ Anthony. He played at Tyler Junior College in Tyler, Texas. So they have, well, you're talking about redoing a roster. We talked about Ole Miss doing that a minute ago. Auburn's done the same thing. But the thing I hear at Auburn over and over and over again, and they had to do this, is they redid their offensive line, and they kind of built their roster around the offensive line. And Shane knows only too well how important this is because Gus Malzahn and Brian Harsin, who didn't have much time, let's be honest, did not do much in offensive line recruiting. They paid the price for that. So that has been a real priority for them. And also defensive backs are too. So Champ Anthony on board for the Tigers.
I feel like Auburn with Hugh Freeze there. We know his background recruiting. With NIL, is the old Yellowwood guy? Are they still in business?
Yeah, they are. Oh,
okay.
Yeah. You know, Jimmy Rain is who you're talking about. You don't see a lot of Yellowwood commercials much anymore. I know you do in the state of Alabama. But it used to see those things nationwide. You remember when Rain had that yellow a cowboy outfit that he wore in those commercials? Yes. That was Jimmy Rain.
Yeah, and he's big time Auburn. So
Yes.
look for Auburn to start buying a lot of players, which you can
Yeah.
do legally now. All right, last team here. We'll let you go. Man, time flew by. I wasn't even paying attention to the clock. Alabama, what's going on up in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, you mentioned Auburn and players. Auburn's got their NIL is one of the best in the SEC. As a matter of fact, their NIL is better than Alabama's. They've added Alabama. Now this is to the 25 class, but they picked up a running back, Anthony Turbo Rogers. I love these nicknames for these guys. But in Shane right now, he's at IMG. But he'll be with Alabama at some point. Something that surprised me a little bit. Tony Mitchell, who's a freshman defensive back, he was arrested back in March, and he was in a car with another guy. They had marijuana, a loaded gun, $7,000 in cash, and scales. Well, you read between the lines on that one. They were clocked at 141 miles an hour.
Whoa.
So Mitchell in May, and this has just recently come out, placed on probation for 3 years. He paid a fine, 100 hours of community service, and drug counseling. So for now, as far as June 1, he was cleared to return to football activities. Now, he has said all the right things to the media. And what I understand is Mitchell's a really good player, but he is on the bottom and going to work his way up. So, but anyway, he is cleared and now back on the team. I really thought that he might be gone, but they worked all that out through the legal system, and that's what's happened.
Yeah, good stuff as always, Brent. And I apologize for keeping this long. One thing, baseball regionals were going on, but I saw this and I took a screenshot. I think this is awesome. Indiana State is moving on. They're supposed to be hosting TCU this weekend, the Sycamores. Well, they can't host the Supers this weekend because of the Indiana Special Olympics are on campus for the 51st straight year. So the Horned Frog faithful and fans made thousands and thousands of dollars donations to the Indiana Special Olympics because they weren't allowed to host it and they're having to play in TCU. I thought that was pretty cool by the Horned Frog fans.
Shane, I think it was even $25,000. It was a huge amount of money, which they're to be credited to. Another interesting thing there is that Tennessee in baseball they're going to Southern Miss. They're not having they're not having the Supers in Knoxville. They're having them in Southern Miss. I thought that was interesting that happened. One more thing is Ole Miss got as if they needed another one. They got a wide receiver, Chris Marshall. Marshall was lost because of discipline issues. They filled the void with Zachariah Franklin from UTSA. And I bring that up because I know we don't talk about UTSA very much, but that is and Shane I know knows this. This is a really good football team. They're called the Road Runners, and Jeff Traylor is their coach. Got a tremendous Frank Harris is their quarterback, but they play. Speaking of Tennessee, they play Tennessee in September. Shane, that thing may be 55-50 or something like that. Because look, UTSA, people may snicker at this, but they want it when you see them play this year. Is in the top 25 in a lot of polls. So sometimes these teams outside of the ones we talk about normally are still very good football teams.
No question about it. Brent, appreciate your time, my man. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
Always enjoy it, Shane. Take care.
Yeah, that's Brent Bearer on the Titan MR hotline. Got to take a quick time out, give back, get to a few things before we get out of here. You're watching and listening to PodUp with Matthews.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peaceland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte.
Campus USA Credit Union.
QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, and watch. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, Chris Doring Mortgage, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Doreen Wibby, Realtor Caldwell Banker, MM Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Aver and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Q Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Hi, Steve Spurrier here. You know, making a reservation at my restaurant is easier than a Saturday afternoon homecoming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, a number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
Welcome back to the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Celebration Points, where the Gators go to celebrate, with premium brands like Regal Cinemas, Prime and Pearl, Dave & Buster's, Nike, Skechers, F45, and the HBC's restaurant. Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, the #1 celebrity polished casual restaurant in America, the hottest restaurant in Florida in the heart of Gator Nation. Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. I want to thank Brent Beard for joining us on the Titan MR hotline. Let's get to This Day in Sports, brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life. Campus USA Credit Union. This day in 2015, Major League Baseball draft, which should be coming up pretty soon. Vanderbilt shortstop Dansby Swanson was the first pick by the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think he got traded or somehow ended up with the Braves. I don't know where he's playing now. Really good player, but that was in 2015. If you missed it yesterday, the top 3 players for the Golden Spikes Award, which I think is equivalent to the Heisman Trophy. Caglione is up for it. And then the 2 LSU guys, I forgot their names, the pitcher and then the kid that won the SEC Player of the Year. So keep our fingers crossed for Jack to bring that award home. Silverback Concrete is a family-led team of heavy concrete specialists that build commercial structures with unrivaled quality. Again, if you missed it last night, Heat go down to the Nuggets. Nuggets have the lead now 2-1. And the Stanley Cup Finals, first game down there for the Florida Panthers at home, trying to get a win. They're down 2-0 to the Golden Knights. And Oklahoma beat the Lady Semis, 5-0 out at OKC. I think they finish them off for another national title for Patty Gasso and her crew. Boy, they're good. They are very, very good. Andy asked on Facebook Live, do you have time to tell us a story about when you were taking Brooke to remind me, Andy? We got to do that. It's not a long story, but I do not have time today. It's a good one, though. It's a very good one for sure. But I appreciate you reminding me, but I will tell you, maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow. It'll be a good story for JC. I don't know if JC's ever heard it. AC says great information from Brent. Yeah, Brent's very good. So make sure you tune in tomorrow. Tell all your friends and family. The more listeners, the better. Have a great day, folks, and we will see you tomorrow. Take care.